Okay, if you listen to the "Are You Young and Talented" video, it goes. Well, I don't know if it goes without saying, but it stands to reason, perhaps, that perchance that if you're older and you're into this, even as an avocation, you're not a professional musician, but you have some riffs, you should. I would recommend you get on YouTube and Bandcamp and all that too, in your spare time, just so you can teach them youngins. You can teach the younger people some of what you know, because by listening to you, they can learn, more stuff. The more exposure to different kinds of music that people have, the more exposure to multiple musicians that people have, then that makes them better as their own creative force. Well, that's at least one way of looking at it. Michael Schenker said that he didn't listen to anybody, that he created in a vacuum. But still, I think, if you're older and you got some riffs, put them out there. Anyway, that's not exactly what I wanted to talk about. On this one, I want to talk about the process. The process. What are you after as your approach to music? Because even if you take, like, for instance, 80s metal, okay? A lot of those guys, those bands, they were expected when they went into a show to play it just like on the record. So that's what I call the classical approach, is when you are going on the road and playing everything just as it was on the recording that you had put out. The album. The album. Guess I got a case of robot voice today. Okay. So you put out a recording on Bandcamp or whatever. In the old days, they put out an LP. It was vinyl. It was about 12 inches. Was it 12 inches? Was it 10 inch? I don't know. It was about that big. It was vinyl. You put it on a turntable. It played about 20 minutes per side. Most albums were, they wouldn't get far over 40 minutes. The technology wouldn't allow it. Although I think in theory you could do over 50 minutes. But you lose sound quality. I forget exactly what happens as you get from the outer side to the center. There's something about the dynamics. It's different. As you move in along the radius of the album, the needle. Anyway, these bands in the 80s, when they went live, or take another 80s band, Depeche Mode. When they went live, they were expected to sound like on the record. This is the classical approach. I call it the classical approach. You play something note for note, exactly as it's known to exist, right? Now, to his credit, my understanding is that J.S. Bach had no dynamic markings on his transcripts, There were no dynamics and no tempo. And he left everything, those parts he left open to interpretation. It was just notes. And you could play it fast or slow, loud or soft, however you wanted to do it. He wanted to give the musicians at least that much freedom within a classical context. And then I understand, like, for instance, on Rachmaninoff's third piano concerto, there's a section where it basically says, okay, this is a break. We go into a piano solo. And I've actually heard for different versions of that third piano concerto. And there is that solo section, and the piano player doesn't play the same thing. At least if memory serves, I remember remarking to myself, this guy is not playing the same piano break as the last guy I heard doing this. Or maybe it was a gal, maybe these were gals. Anyway, from piano player to piano player on that particular piece, I heard a different piano solo. But it remains that the classical approach is you play it, the way it was originally created. So that ties in with songwriting much of a set form are you after as a creator of music? Do you want to have a classical approach where you write these songs, be they simple or fairly involved, and then when you go to play them live, you play them back exactly as you originally created them? Or is the song form constantly morphing? The other approach, my understanding is that a band like Phish does this today. Is Phish even a thing anymore? Is that 10 or 15 years ago? I'm out of the loop. But when I was a kid, the big band that did this improvisation thing was, it was the Grateful Dead. And they were known to take, their studio albums are sort of an afterthought. It's just something maybe they had to do because they were under contract. I don't know. But a 3 or 4 minute studio song could become a half-hour jam in a concert, and then there's just a mixing and matching of all these different songs, and then sometimes they would go off and just jam. I don't think they were in any song. They were just creating as they went. For better or for worse, I'm not going to comment on whether that was good or bad. It's just another approach, and they made a living at it. They had a following of people. So what is it you want to do? Do you want to, and then the other thing is you could learn other people's songs. You could be in a cover band and make a living at it, right? Like there's that Van Halen band, or, there's some pretty well-known cover bands. Some people that cover a variety of material. Some people that concentrate on emulating one band. Like you could do the Doors, or, I don't know. A lot of people. I guess I just thought the Doors would be cool. Now, Led Zeppelin was kind of also a jam band. Anyway, what do you want to do? Do you want to be a cover band? Do you want to do originals in a set form that you play the same way every time? Do you want to just jam? Do you want to jam and have your shows a lot more open-ended? You're going to attract a different audience for any of those approaches. And so, which leads me a little bit to technique. Now, I'm not sure when I ask myself what I did as far as a player, how honest I'm being, but I decided at some point I wanted to jam and pursue this thing that I might never reach of creating on the fly and never really playing any song the same way twice, and creating on the fly and having these long open solo sections on a lot of the songs. Now, along the way, I made up a few things that were kind of set in stone. Like in a song, like, okay, how about the intro to Princess Singer, the way it morphed? It started out as one thing, ended up as another, but it did end up as something, and it's pretty much that's the way I play the intro to that song. Having said that, I'll probably turn around and not play it like that next time. But I do have these set parts within songs. Anyway, beyond that, is generally the template is just, this is the progression, and you play the chords however you want every time through, because there's so many ways to play a given chord. I just mix and match as I go through a song. And the solos, most of the solos on my songs are like, well, here's sort of an idea about the solo. You can sort of do this sort of riff and then work around that. Some of them aren't even that developed. It's just like, do whatever you want. Now, that's my approach, and it hasn't paid off financially. But that's another thing. Do you want to get paid? You might have to approach things differently if you want to get paid. I think if you love what you're doing, and like I was saying in the last video, you really go for it, I think the money will come on its own. I was always sort of hemming and hawing, like, I'm going to go over here and work in high tech to try to have an income so I can do music in my spare time, but it never allowed me to go 100% into music. But anyway, the thing I was talking about was, okay, what I'm doing is open-ended. And I asked myself, okay, do you not have the ability to get the chops, or you're just not going to do it? Because you look at guys, see, I don't want to disparage the guys who actually learn songs note for note and have really masterful technique. You know, like an example would be Paul Gilbert. That guy has incredible technique as far as like double picking. He can start anything on an up or down. Alternate picking. You know, up and down picking. He can use a thin pick and still play really fast. So that means there's no wasted motion. And so guys like that, man, it's amazing. It's amazing. And he can improvise too, you know, but from what I've seen of what a guy like that does, some of what he does is set in stone. It is a classical approach. Steve Vai has a classical approach on a lot of what he's done. He has great chops. So are you going to work on chops? Is your material going to be set in stone? How much of it is going to be jammed? How much of it is going to be covers? How much of it is going to be a really buttoned down structure? You know, who you're trying to attract. What do you like doing? Like I've spoken of, I think I have sort of an Asperger's where, for me, just doing some of the riffs is just like, it's enough in a lot of cases, you know. Particularly given where I am now. A lot of the woodshedding that I could have done probably should have happened when I was in my teens and my 20s. And I did, you know. There were times when I played 3 and 4 hours a day, or, you know, I would be riding on a bus and doing like tapping exercises. Excuse me. But, you know, the guys like an Yngwie, that guy started when he was 8 years old or something and played 12 hours a day, right? So there's levels of woodshedding. I started when I was 16, basically. And, you know, I had some exposure to the guitar before I actually got a guitar. I had a guitar actually when I was about 12, but all I did was kind of sit there and play with the volume and then listen to it make noise. I didn't even know how to tune it or anything. But when I was 16, you know, that's when I started learning chords and all of that. But I never was a huge woodshedder. And part of it goes back to that thing of, you know, I believed my own hype too much. That it was just all going to take care of itself because people said I was a good player. But no, you got to really strive, man. That's what I would say. Even if you're going to do the jam band thing, you can take it to the extreme, you know, and just have this giant reference of riffs and create on the fly, like, to an incredible level, you know. Anyway, this is just kind of about, what do you want to do? Do you want to jam? How much woodshedding are you going to do? How much popular appeal do you want to have? Do you like the classical approach or the open-ended approach? I would recommend, if you're young, answering all these questions for yourself. And if you're older, sharing what you've done to this point so that it's another reference point for up-and-coming musicians. I think I'll just leave this at that. I'm not going to do a part 2 or anything. Hope you got the essence of what I'm saying here. Okay.